Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TrailBlazers podcast. We're your hosts, Tyler and Dave.
So we're here to help break down the critical decisions, personal developments, and key factors that help get our guests to where they are today and contribute to where they will be in the future. So how's the day going?
Sweet. Day's going pretty good so far. Couple interviews this morning. Not for me, but like I'm the one interviewing people like within my job. So basically, we're trying to hire a couple more machine learning engineers and a couple developers. We had a machine learning engineer in Israel this morning. Actually, two machine learning engineers in Israel this morning that we did interviews with. So yeah, that was kind of like the first couple hours of my morning. Now, what are we? We're 11 a.m. right now. So then, yeah, between about 10:15 and 11, I was reading some of those articles that we've been talking about recently. Definitely a lot to think about. I like those. I felt like the one. So okay, for reference, basically, you shared with me the article of that. Like we have within this lifetime, from here on out, essentially, there's probably like a discrete or like a numerical amount of time we might be able to spend with certain people or like with our parents, or like, for example, there was like a little infographic that there's like a discrete amount of dumplings that you will probably eat for the rest of your life. But then like Tyler, what I thought probably like the most powerful portion of that was basically realizing that the person writing the article was saying to you, you've probably spent 93% of the time in your life at this point with your parents. Like if you're an adult, you've graduated university, you've left your hometown or whatever, you've probably spent 93% of the time you will possibly spend with your parents in this lifetime already to this point in time. And like, I don't know, it's actually like a really interesting takeaway because say like somebody like Tyler, yourself, you live in Montreal, me right now, I'm living in Asia. Our families are both back in like Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. It's pretty crazy to think about because even, maybe even if I say like I'm up visiting home, like, I'm still pretty busy and like seeing kind of other friends and whatever. But it makes me sort of think you really got to cherish those moments that you're actually spending with your family, whether it's like your parents, whether it's with your sisters, your siblings. You got to enjoy those interactions and you got to be present too. Yeah, that's kind of like my more deep thoughts of this morning after reading those articles.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I'm glad you enjoyed them. It makes for interesting morning reading too, because you start off your day and it's like makes you really think about your life choices and stuff like that. But I remember I had read that same article like as soon as I moved to the Netherlands, and it was kind of like it's kind of scared me. It was kind of shocking. It was like at that point I was away from home. I'd already made the decision to leave, and then it really made me question: have I spent my time the most effective way that I can with my parents and my friends and all the relationships that I had invested time into that, that article points out you're in the tail end of it now. And, how much time do you really have left? It's a discrete amount, like you were saying, it's countable, which is, I think that's the scary part is you can actually quantify it. So every single time you see those people in your life again, you're like you say, you're in the last 7% now. So I think it kind of gave me some perspective in that, now is the time going forward, even though we're still fairly quite young. I'm 26 going forward. It makes you want to make the most of all the time that you have with the people that are important to you in your life, especially if you've moved away. Like this is all just more so if you've chosen a career or something, or you're an expat or you leave, then you're only coming home a couple times a year or something like that, right? So it's I felt like it gave me good perspective, and it's something good to keep in mind if you're in university and you're just coming out of university and you're deciding to go somewhere else for work or something like that. It's important to keep on investing in those relationships that you already have, and make sure that you're appreciating them, because you're kind of at the tail end now.
Yeah, completely agree with you, man. You really got to kind of like put the emphasis and put the focus on the time that you're just like present in whatever situation it is, right? And I liked within the article too, it basically highlights as well, spend the time doing, like if it's somebody you love or somebody you want to spend time with, like make sure you're actually present when you're there. And that's like one thing I've always appreciated too about say like people who like make the time to like go meet friends for a dinner or something like that. It's just like put your phone down on the table and like have a conversation with that person, right? Because you're definitely going to learn something new that you didn't know if you just like actually have dialogue with them. And once again, there's a discrete amount of times in your life that you're going to see this person again, right? Like you never know if it's going to be the last time seeing this person because this person moves away, if something happens, anything like that. So it's like when you're just like with that person, just have your focus for like an hour during that meal or whenever that occurrence or like that situation is, and have a dialogue, learn about something new from their life, and also share something from yours. And this is how we grow as people, through communication and learning. So and speaking of communication and learning, we have a very interesting person on the podcast today by the name of Inyani. And actually, Tyler, you probably know a little bit more about Inyani than I do, so why don't you do the intro today?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, we have Inyani on the podcast. He started out doing a bachelor's in electrical and communications engineering at the U of A with the biomedical option. And then after that, he moved on and did a master's in mechanical engineering. His project was focused on sensory feedback and prosthetic limbs. And from there, he moved on, and now he is a medical student at the University of Calgary because he's going to be a doctor. So he has a super interesting path. And I think, every time I talk to Inyani or see him post something online, I learn something new. He has a really unique perspective of the way he looks at things. He's one of those people that, I really appreciate. His knowledge base is extremely broad, but also extremely deep, kind of in all facets. And I think it's rare to find that. So he can make some really interesting analogies and kind of, draw connections from one field to another that, I might not have realized or other people might not have realized. So it was really a joy talking to him. And, I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. Whether you're looking for engineering advice, life advice, career advice, he's got something for everybody. So I think without further ado, we're going to send it over to Inyani, and we'll hope you guys enjoy it. So thanks for being one of the initial guests, and kind of just what you were speaking about. And I'm going to reference back to some things that we did in the NGAC panel that we spoke about to kind of frame one of my questions around. Is that one thing you said there was, I think everybody has the idea that they want to come into university, and it's like you go in, you come out, you go in, you get out with your undergrad. And for you kind of maybe had that same perception going in. And I'm not even going to try to describe all the different degrees you've taken and courses you've taken. So maybe it's better for you to do that. You started in electrical, you did a master's in mechanical, and now you're in medical school, I believe. So kind of maybe just walk us through the thought process of somebody that thinks they're going in just for an undergrad and then it ends up where you are today. How does that kind of happen? How do you evolve over time to take all those different degrees?
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good question. And I think it's just that, my thoughts was in for 4 years, out for 4 years, right? And I think that's a pretty standard thought that a lot of people that go into engineering think, and that's because, and that's one of the reasons that people are much attracted to the program, right? It's in after those 4 years, you have marketable skills, and they say, what is it, like 80 and 90% of people end there and go and work, and it's only like maybe 5 or 10% that do a master's, and from there 1% that do a PhD, and from there 1% that stay in academia, right? So there's really a pull to leave and do things out in the real world. So for myself, I guess to answer your question, it falls back on something that we also talked the last time that we met, and that that pertains to the why, right? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you interested in the things that you're interested in? Why space? Why machine learning? Why robotics, and so on? And entering university, I knew that I was interested in biology as much as I was interested in physics and math. And that's why when I entered into the electrical, computer, and electronics of engineering stream, but with the biomedical option, right? And the idea was I love technology, I love the math and the physics, but you have to ask yourself at some point in time, like, we all gain complementary skills, and even within a department in electrical, pretty much I have similar skill sets to a lot of the electrical, computer, and engineers that graduate. But I think the thing that differentiates people is where they want to apply that skill set to, right? And with engineering, it's so broad. You could go through almost any engineering stream, whether it's chemical, electrical, civil, mechanical, and the math skills that you have will allow you to enter the world of physics, will allow you to dabble in the stock market, will allow you to do wealth of things. And as a result, I think we see that by the diversity of our classmates. So for myself specifically, I found that because I had that innate or early interest in biology, specifically I'm applying, I was learning about and interested to learn and gain to the human body, that kind of, in a sense, paved the path, right? So a biomedical stream, you're in there and you're exposed to certain things. So you're exposed to medical device development and medical technologies, whether that's imaging, ultrasound, CT, MRI, and you're taught to apply the engineering skills, signal processing, right? You can use that to analyze the light of stars, right? And how we know that the universe is expanding is related to that, right? Like you gain the signals and you're able to determine after you process them, right? You can go into the frequencies domain, examine that the light from all of the galaxies are at a high frequency, right? Or if you like to talk about wavelengths, right? They're at I might get this wrong, but I think red is going away, blue is coming towards. But either way, low and high frequency in those same skill sets. Thank you, Tyler. But
Gotcha.
But in the end of the day, it's a signal, and I can apply my Fourier analysis or other techniques that I've learned to analyze that signal in a similar way, right? The electrical activity that runs through your body and allows your arms to move, or allows you to function, or is causes seizures or epilepsy, or is the exact same phenomena. It's a time-varying signal, and once you have a time-varying signal, you can apply the skills that you've acquired to analyze that and manipulate it, right? And that's that's what we do as engineers. We apply these skills to manipulate the world for economic gain or for other gain, right? So I just found that I was so attracted to always applying the skills, and every time I learned a new skill set, whether it was robotics or other concepts, the first question that came to mind was, how can I apply this to the human body? So with robotics, you learn about your inverse kinematics and your forward kinematics and dynamics and control of robotic systems. And for some people, the thought is like, okay, like how can I change, how can I create an industrial robot that can make a process more efficient? For other people, how can I create the next Mars rover, right? And for some people, myself included, it's how can I apply these concepts to the body? Although the human body is not exactly a robotic system, you can model it as such. So you take your elbow, and it's not a perfect hinge joint, but it can be modeled as a hinge joint, right? So now you can apply the same techniques that you learn to determine how your body should move, what is the kinematics, what is the dynamics of your body. And once you have that, then you're able to consider interventions when things go wrong. You damage your arm, you have some sort of nerve abnormality, and as a result, now you're not functioning as you normally should be. Well, because you understand what normal is, and because you understand the tools to manipulate similar systems, robots, right? You can kind of mesh the two together, and that can result in something that is life-changing for people, whether it's an exoskeleton, whether it's a prosthesis, external or internal, and so on. So yeah, that's a long-winded way to say it's about the why. Why for me was, how can I apply these tool sets to combat problems in the human body that can enhance the lives of people, right? And sometimes it's to bring people back to normal, and frequently, I think these days, it's also to see how can we move past the limitations that biology has set on us, right? So there's no reason why we only need 2 hands, right? And it would be nice to have 3 or 4 or 8, right? And in other arenas, whether it's interacting with the environment, wouldn't it be nice to turn on my computer or to drive my car? And I think self-driving car is definitely the way to go. But in a different universe, you could think, rather than actually using my hands, or if I'm unable to use my hands, can I just think about driving and make that happen? And you can, by applying those engineering tools, learning a bit about the biology and meshing the two together, right? So then that led me to my master's, and now to medicine. So I think, yeah, I could talk forever, but I'll stop now.
That's all good. Actually, like I think probably a lot of it is kind of like always thinking about the why of how you're kind of thinking about things. So maybe a couple questions is like, for me, for example, I didn't really think about my why until probably I was at my master's level, and I think at that point then things came a lot more clearly to me. So for you, did you really have think about a why for the transition between, say, like mechanical in your bachelor's degree to electrical within your master's? Like, was there kind of a really good thesis for the change of discipline there?
Yeah. And again, my thought process wasn't how I want to switch into mechanical engineering. My thought process was like, okay, I'm interested in this biomedical space. What are the possibilities that are available to me? And I didn't limit myself just to mechanical engineering or to engineering in general. I think I had applied to a lot of different graduate programs ranging from engineering. I think I touched every single engineering discipline, but also like biology. And I'm accepted to do a project with modeling RNA. So I don't know if you guys are aware, but CRISPR is this really nice tool that allows you to kind of go into the human genome, or if you have a segment of DNA, you can go and snip in particular areas, remove a chunk out, and put in some other chunk. And like the way I like to think about it is like at this point with the Human Genome Project and our potential our capabilities of sequencing, we kind of can transcribe the book of life of any species, right? And now with CRISPR, we have the pen of life, where we're able to go in, erase or write whatever we want. But the biggest problem that we have now is we don't know how to read the book. So how can you change something that you don't understand, right? So we have an idea of what the letters are, the base pairs, A, C, G, T, right? But how do those letters form to make words, and form to make sentences, and form to make paragraphs and stories and novels and so on, right? So that's actually an area where machine learning is being applied, trying to decipher the human genome so we can comprehend these stories and then now use these tools that we have to appropriately impact things, right? So yeah, it was a project related to that, but it was in biology. And because I was chasing the why, not the how necessarily, I was able to go and talk to these people, which I think other engineers that might not have that biology background or might not be interested in that space would not really see themselves be able to apply or contribute, although we have such broad skill sets that we can contribute a lot, but we don't make ourselves available to these spaces. So that was another project. And once I had kind of gone through and seen what the options were in the biomedical space and all these arenas, the one that really pulled to me was in mechanical engineering, and it was under the Bionic Limbs for Improved Natural Controls Lab. And there they worked on trying to improve on the state of prostheses. And to me, that was so attractive because it allowed me to use my electronics and computer and computing background, but at the same time, I was interested in modeling. And with electrical, a lot of the times you're given a model and that's your starting point. So, okay, I have my second order differential equation. I can design my controller. I can do all the magic that needs to be done. I can build my electronics and code and so on. But like, I wanted to know how to produce these models by myself. And I find that in mechanical engineering, the students that came from there had a stronger background in that, whether it was modeling rigid body movements, whether it was generating the second order differential equations from the Lagrangian or other methods, right? And going into a master's in the prostheses bionic space allowed me to acquire those skills. So that was kind of, I was kind of the driving factor there. So it wasn't that I knew for sure that I was going to prostheses. It was that I surveyed the area, and not just locally at the U of A, like the field broadly, right? So in the biomedical world, there it's pretty broad, but there are more engineering or traditional engineering related. And when I say I'm engineering, because sometimes you can be a biomedical engineer without being an engineer, right? So when I refer to traditional engineering, like the engineers with iron rings can become P engines and so on. So you have your biomechanics. Yeah, yes, sir. I actually had to stop wearing mine because I was at the Peter Lougheed Center not too long ago for a pre-clerkship elective in vascular surgery, and I almost forgot my iron ring on the pockets of one of the scrubs. So I thought to myself, no, this can't happen. so and now it's on it's on my shelf. I'm in another room, secure, so. But
yeah, just for safekeeping, right? They'll send you another one, but it's bad. You get put on a list somewhere if you lose your ring, I think.
Yeah, guys, I already lost mine one time. Sorry.
No.
Oh, geez. No.
Yeah, I won't go into a tangent about the ring. So, but yeah, maybe I'm afterwards. But
we'll do an appendix for it. Everybody's got their own very strong opinions on the ring and the ceremony and everything in general. So I'm sure there's lots to get into.
I personally like it. I think it's fantastic. And if I wasn't concerned that I would lose it in a scrub somewhere and never find it again, then I might have no problem wearing it. In fact, my ring was actually not I think during the ceremony, you sweat so much. Maybe it's just me, but your pinky size changes, or you can slip in a ring that's a size too small, and that's what I did. So at the end of the ceremony, my pinky was actually turning purple.
Wow!
Not at the end of the ceremony. No. Like the ceremony happened, and then we had like an after party, and each department had kind of their own thing, right? And like around 8 p.m. ish. My pinky started to like throb. I looked at it and it was purple, and I'm a pretty pigmented guy, so to see a full finger was so creepy. But luckily, I had a friend that had the other problem, and his ring was too loose, and it just so happened that when we swapped, it was the perfect fit. So I feel. Yeah, I'm obligated because I promised him that. Yeah, no, I'm 100%. I promised him though at the end of our careers that we would give each other our original rings back. So I can't lose this ring because it's not really mine, So
I like that. That's an extra sentimental value on that ring, man. You've got that extra obligation to make sure you don't leave it in your scrubs anywhere.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
But back to so I think I've derailed now. I don't know if I answered your original question.
Don't worry, dude. It's all good content. You touched on a few times about your why, and you're obviously really interested in like the nuances of engineering and all the cool things there are to learn and stuff like that. That's really obvious that you just enjoy diving into problems like that. But I had also read in a CBC article about you from a couple of years back. That you worked with a number of amputees in your biomedical studies, and you said that you found working with them, their resilience very inspiring, and I can only imagine what that must have been like. So I wonder, my question to you is, how much has the people that benefit from the things you design in the biomedical space, how much does that drive your why, and kind of how did that evolution take place as you started working with those patients, and how does that motivate you to keep going down the path of getting further and further into the medical field to help in that regard?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think, so one thing I just have to say that when you do anything worthwhile, there's always a team of people. And I was very fortunate to be in such a great environment that nurtured innovation, nurtured problem solving, and building those connections with the people that would be the end users of some of the research that we were doing. So, and because I was in this environment, it wasn't that we were building things that might be useful. The head of the lab was actually a physiatrist, Dr. Jacqueline Hebert, and she always posed the question: how is this clinically relevant? How can this be translated? And I really like that mindset, because sometimes you can design things just because they're the most efficient, or they're the optimal solution. But if they're not used, then what's the point, right? So an example in the prosthesis world is, although we have myoelectric prostheses, and they're very useful for a lot of people, and to define a myoelectric prostheses, the name suggests they're prostheses that run on electricity, whether it's battery powered and so on, like all of the cool stuff that you see on TV, and they're super cool. I have to admit, but yeah, depending on the person, let's say that you're a farmer, right, and you lost your limb due to a farming accident, but and the point and why you want a new limb is to continue doing the things that you're doing. Unfortunately, the myoelectric prostheses are just not at that state where some of the heavy duty jobs that a farmer, for example, might do. Yeah, so as a result, you find that these farmers will rely on older technology, the body powered prostheses, and these are cable driven prostheses. And although they're not high tech like the myoelectric prostheses, they do what is required, right? And they offer the farmer adequate feedback. They're reliable, and they get the job done, right? So just because you can give someone a myoelectric prosthesis and it's cool and it's cutting edge and it's the thing, the talk of the town, right? If it doesn't actually meet the needs of that person, it defeats the point. So I think with that mindset, and also being in an interdisciplinary environment where, yes, you're working with electrical engineers and mechanical engineers and computer scientists, but you're also working with physiatrists and neuroscientists and plastic surgeons and prosthetists and orthopedic surgeons and OTs and PTs, and it's just, you can kind of see everyone can contribute in a particular way, and it's the sum total of our actions that allows us to service the people that we're trying to improve their quality of life, right? So to answer your question, it's a big part, because when we conducted our studies, we would often have people that come in, and either these people lost upper limbs or lower limbs, and you have all the combinations and permutations of limb loss that can happen, and sometimes it's through really drastic means, right? So I recall a guy we worked with was hit by a train and flung a few miles away, and survived that, lost a couple of limbs, but yet was still able to come in and participate in the hopes of helping to contribute to technology that can improve the lives of people down the road. And you see other people with other stories where they have this drive to come in and be useful. And not just in the research setting, but even within the hospitals or the limb loss. You have people coming back and sharing their stories and helping people go through the phases that you go through when you lose a limb, right? And not everyone gets to the point where they're able to come back and to contribute, and it's a hard time, especially if you've lived your entire life with your limbs and all of a sudden they're gone, and either it affects your work life, and for some people that's detrimental, right? Because yeah, if you can't work, then how can you provide for yourself and for your family? Or it affects your personal aesthetics, and for some people that's also as important. To being able to fit in is important, and that has a big impact on the mental health of individual. So it's a really difficult thing to go through, and it's just remarkable that someone can go through that, go through all the stages, and still decide that, even though I'm still dealing with this, I still experience nerve pain, I still experience all the issues that I've had to face up until this point, but I can give of myself to those that are at different stages, and those that are having harder times, and even contribute my time to try and improve the field, so that things will be easier for those that are coming after me. And to me, that's remarkable, and that does really contribute to the why, because you see this and you see, this is why I'm doing this. This is why, I'm calculating those integrals. This is why I'm programming in pointers. This is why I want to make sure that the bits that I'm transmitting wirelessly are as efficient as possible, so that the system can work as fast as possible. And this is why you can convince yourself to take that extra step to make sure that things are the best that they can be, because you're being of service to people like that, right? And it's remarkable, and we do have these skills, and I can tell you now, in medicine I'm really pulled into more implantable things. And one example is in the area of functional neurosurgery, and that really ties in with rehab medicine, or it can also tie in with plastics and orthopedic surgery as well. But for example, if you take in an individual that is experiencing tremors due to Parkinson's, let's say, right? You can actually determine where in the brain is causing that, like where in the motor cortex the issue is, and then you can introduce these stimulators, deep brain stimulators, and what they essentially do is send in electrical signals that can modulate what's going on in the motor cortex. And as a result, you have someone that's really suffering from tremors, and it's really affecting their quality of life. And you kind of pop this tool on, and all of a sudden these tremors are gone, or they're attenuated to a point in which they can function again, right? And like I'm not in the field yet, but I've been exposed enough that you hear some of these stories where I think the one that really touched me was this one guy that was saying that he was so thankful for the procedure and for the technology, because it allowed him to walk down the aisle with his daughter and give her away during her wedding, right? And like, that's something that we take for granted. But if you're at a state where you have tremors to this extent and none of the medications work, right? Then what can you do? And yes, it's insane to think that someone will open up your head and then you'll I like to say put a rock, but electronic device, but it is a rock, silicon, whatever, and pop in this rock in a strategic area, and it produces electrical activity, the same electrical activity that's running through our houses to light up our rooms, or running through our phones to connect us in the way that our phones have allowed, to be able to interact with your and change your life in this way. It's remarkable, and I can't think of doing anything else, and I do recognize that there are cool things to be done elsewhere, but for me, this is it. Yeah.
Sure. I think, you know what, like kind of listening to you, I thought there was a lot of things that were, obviously like super touching, just in regards to the story about the man being able to walk down with his daughter during the wedding. And, some of the other things you're mentioning too, like in regards to the research in your master's. And I think a lot of it's really nice because basically, in my opinion, it gives us some type of like emotional motivation factor that like can really help us validate like the work that we're doing is super important. And you can visibly see and feel the impacts that you're having on people's lives. And I think a lot of that actually kind of stems back into two things. One, it sounded like the professor that you're working with in your master's, they already had kind of the team motivated at the right point of saying that they're always asking the why, why is this relevant to the clinical trials, or sorry, like the clinical portion of this. And I think once we can get like a professor or a mentor for us that helps us essentially push us in that particular direction, it can really help our focus a lot, because we know that the work that we're going to be doing, like, if you have to take some integrals, or you're coding in C++ or Java, and you need to do your pointers and whatnot, why you're doing that, and it makes it that much more valuable. And so I know towards the end of the last response, you were sort of starting to touch on a little bit more of perhaps like a combination of electrical and maybe robotics that you might want to continue doing more in the future. Have you thought like a lot about kind of like where you want to take your path with the medical discipline right now? Because I'm really interested. You have this really fascinating background, and you like trying quite a few different things. So I'm really interested to see where you're thinking of taking that now.
I'm just going to pop in real quick because I've heard Inyani say that he's actually considering also a PhD in mechanical engineering
wow.
as well, in addition. And I don't know if he ever did that. So I'd love to hear if that became a thing as well, in addition to Dave's question.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess before I answer both your questions, I just want to touch on the fact that really, I think I was told pretty early on, it's not what you do, it's who you do it with, right? And that's been true consistently. So with my master's, I worked with under Dr. Jacqueline Hebert, as well as Dr. Albert Avetti, who is in mechanical engineering. Jacqueline was or is a physiatrist and an MD. So having those two individuals kind of support my growth and also direct me during that point in time was very critical. And to this day, I really appreciate all of the guidance that they provided for me. And I think, even now they're still providing me with good content, right? And in addition to that, my lab mates too. I can go and list everyone, but I don't want to miss anyone, but everyone in that space was so helpful. And I think sometimes you find yourself in spaces that are very competitive, and as a result, people are less likely to lend a hand. But it was just such a phenomenal place to be, because everyone had a skill set and everyone was willing to teach or use their skill sets to uplift one another. And as a result, that's why I think it started off by saying, like, to this day, they're having movie nights every Monday, and board game nights, even during the pandemic, virtually on Fridays. And it's just, that's the culture, right? And it's just, yeah. So I really do think the environment and who you're with like has a profound effect, and I'm sure that's going to hold even in the future. So it's as important to know where you're going to end up, who you're going to be with, as what you're going to be doing. And that was one of the reasons why I ended up going to the Blink Lab, even though it was in mechanical and engineering, because I found that the culture was what I needed to grow, and I think I made the right call there. So to answer your question, I think medicine is interesting because at some point, so I'm wrapping up pre-clerkship now, then you go on to clerkship, and then from there you graduate and are considered an MD. And once that happens, then you have to apply to residency, and that's kind of the area where you specialize in. So right now, or I guess like anything, there isn't certainty, and you apply, and based off like what the program wants and what you want, they actually use an algorithm, I think similar to what's used on dating websites, to try and match people with programs, and I've been told that it works in the favor of the students, but yeah, we'll see. So I think
I'll get the mechanical, or I'll get the machine learning engineer to double validate the algorithm for you, and make sure you get what you want. Just let me know.
Please do. But if I can talk freely, I think I'm interested in a finite number of things, and there are a finite number of specialties that I think can offer me what it is that I'm keen on. So I find that in medicine, they say the first decision that you have to make is, are you going down the, I guess, the general path, the medical path, or the surgical path, right? So in the general path, that's your family doctors, GPs, internists. Yes, I think it's the internists, general physicians that work in the hospital. I'm fairly certain it's internists. Don't quote me though.
It's all good. You'd have to be telling Tyler and I think on that one. I don't think either of us. If you tell us, we're good.
Listening.
Yeah, we're agreeing.
Someone might be listening and be like, "Hey, I don't know," But anyways, like, and they're considered the backbone of the healthcare system. So the work that they do is tremendous. In the sense that like they're pretty much the master triages, and they deal with a lot of the common things, which are the things that show up frequently, and then they also direct specific things to the specialists. And without them, I think our system would be really, really clogged up. Right, so that's like path one. Path two is the medical path, and that most people will tend to think of the internal medicine specialists, so your liver doctors, your cardiologists, your endocrinologists, and so on. And these individuals specialize in a particular area, but because they're or they've chosen the medical path, they do a lot of very interesting problem solving. To determine what the appropriate diagnosis is, and then they deal with the medical treatments. So how do you dose drugs and manage all the complications that exist with the disease as well as with the medication. And then finally, there's kind of the surgical block, right? And although I kind of categorize it neatly into three, there's a lot of overlap. There's like interventional radiology or cardiology, and there's also things like medical genetics or pathology that don't really fit nicely into these boxes. But just to keep it simple, so within surgery, that's kind of the area that I'm pulled to because it's very procedural, right? And I think as engineers, we can appreciate that, or speak for myself first, and see if you guys agree, But it's algorithmic in like the sense that you kind of have an idea of what you want to do, right? So someone comes in, and I have like disclaimer, I'm not a surgeon, I'm a medical student, but from what I've seen so far, like someone comes in, you're not really figuring out like what the diagnosis is. Like this person has a tumor, the GP or the specialist has determined this, and now your role is to remove that tumor, right? So you're like, okay, so I know what I have to do. I know what the end goal is. The challenge comes in when you have to deal with the uncertainty that exists with the procedure. So you open up someone's head, maybe the anatomy is different, right? Like the anatomy textbooks that we have are kind of average, but there are natural variants that exists, right? So that if the procedure does not go well for whatever reason, right? There is excess fat tissue, there's something goes wrong, and then being able to be creative at that time is kind of the skill set I see that surgeons have. So although you're not problem solving to determine what the diagnosis is and what needs to be done, and you kind of have an idea of what needs to be done, it's actually doing it and being able to dance around when things don't go as planned, and it seems that that happens quite frequently, right? So I'm pulled into that for that purpose, but also for the fact that a lot of the surgical specialties tend to promote research, right? So for example, cardiac surgery and neurosurgery, like within the residency programs, they're like 5-6 years long, because you're almost expected to do a graduate program, whether it's a master's, and a lot of people, especially neurosurgery, will do a PhD, right? But in other programs as well, people will consider that. So I'm attracted to the fact that yes, you get this procedural way in which, or this procedural career in which you get to problem solve in real time, and then like the way that I see it, and my friends that are interested in general or in internal will argue with me on this, but they're not here, so I can speak as I please.
Yeah, we're not
gonna argue with you on it, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no.
Your word is law on this one.
Yeah.
And it seems that with surgery, like you have a problem and then you solve it, like there's a tumor, we remove the tumor, you have a what's called, your carotid is blocked, right? We can go in and clear up the block, like done, like go, right? Whereas, and this is why frequently with surgeons, there isn't really a longitudinal relationship that you have with patients. Like they come in, you do what needs to be done, and yes, you'll follow up until like it's appropriate, and you kind of stop. But with other specialties, you can have like even I recall with Jacqueline, my one of my master's supervisors, I think she had patients that she's known for over 10 years, and that's just because you have that longitudinal relationship, which is nice, right? Like that is nice, but yeah, it seems to me that the problem doesn't like just end. I'm at some point in time, and I think that's a bit attractive for myself. But a research aspect and the fact that they encourage research, and I've been spending maybe too much time in the neurosurgery world, and other surgical specialties have other things that are going on, but I just because this is fresh in my head, I'll talk about it. But yeah, I think like the last three cool things that I've seen that are in line with the conversations that we've had before, and engineering per se, is when you're doing a pre-operation, so kind of a surgery before an actual surgery, right? To determine if a patient in this example that is experiencing multiple seizures or has an epilepsy, right, is a candidate for an actual lobotomy, so to remove a part of the brain that might be causing the seizures. So before you do that, you have to determine where in the brain the seizures are being produced, and it can either be a focal seizure, so that means that it's coming from a specific place in the brain, and that doesn't mean that it stays there, but like the source is, you can pinpoint and point, okay, that's the area of the brain that's producing the seizure, and then it evolves and consumes other parts of the brain. Or it's a diffuse seizure in which there's no real point where you can, or no real location where you can point and say that's the place. kind of all over the place. So if it's diffuse, you can't really do anything surgically because you can't remove the entire brain. But if it's focal and it's in an area that's not critical, right? Like it's not a speech area, or it's not in your visual area, or a motor area, then you can actually get that part of the brain removed. And sometimes there's consequences, other times there are consequences, but like depending on how deliberate I'm trying to say a word, I can't pronounce it right now because I got new braces. So just like all the words that I have in my back pocket, I have to think, can I actually say this with this brace? You know, it's
Gotta retrain the mouth a little bit.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm 100%. Yeah, deliberating. I that's my best attempt. But
Hey,
like,
the teeth look good though. The teeth look good though.
They look good, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. No, yeah. So back on track. So yeah. So some people are able to agree with the trade-offs of removing a chunk of the brain and dealing with the consequences of that, just so that they can have that improved quality of life, because the seizures are just too much, and they can't hold down a job. You can't hold down a job, unfortunately. Other aspects of your life are impeded, right? So whether that is trying, for example, trying to enter a relationship is very hard. If you're in a relationship, it's hard to maintain that. If you can't sustain a job, you can't sustain yourself, right? So I think frequently from the patients I've seen, a lot of people are well into their 40s, 50s, but yet still remain at home because that's unfortunately the reality of the situation, right? So, so these are reasons why people consider removing a chunk of their brain. If that can be improved, then it might be worth it for that individual. So anyways, so the pre-surgery and how this ties into engineering is done is almost doesn't require the surgeon, you know? And like as an engineer, I can say that confidently, and I think surgeons and physicians generally don't like it when you say that you can replace them, but it is what it is, you know? But anyways, again, this is because I'm talking to engineers. I would tread more carefully if I was talking to a medical personnel, because you always have to market your technologies. It seems as an assistive tool, right? It complements the physician, it complements the surgeon. And it's funny, like being an engineer and like seeing the vocabulary that's being used just to kind of like ease medical personnel into using technology, where from the engineering point of view, like you think, why can't you just go all the way, you know? But anyways, so the technology is you want to insert electrodes into particular areas of the brain that you think might cause seizures, right? And how this is done, or one way that this is done is by hand. Another way, and like super cool, is using this manipulator. So I'm a robotic arm, right? And what the robotic arm does is it uses information from your MRI or the MRI of the patients, and in the operating room, then you kind of do a co-registration. So you point to specific areas of the head, and like this is all done by the guidance of the software, right? So you point to specific areas of the head, and it matches those areas to the MRI image, and then that way, like in the software's point of view, it kind of wraps that MRI around like the head, and then the robot now knows where its targets are in space, right? And from there, you tell it, okay, I want to insert this electrode into this particular area of the brain, and it's just right. Yeah, you're solving an inverse kinematics problem, right? Like you know, the forward kinematics of the robot, so where the manipulator is in space, and then you, based off that co-registration, know where the endpoint is, right? So you have where you are, where you want to be. That's an inverse kinematics problem. And then from there, like the robot can actually go and point, okay, this is where I need to drill. And this is where now, like we don't trust the robot to drill by itself, right? So you'll have a resident or a surgeon going in and just right, and they kind of drill into the skull, and then from there they'll take the electrode, and in that area they'll insert it, so you have this kind of like wire hanging out from your head, and you repeat that maybe 20 times, right? And like really there's nothing stopping the robot from like, okay, this is where it is, this is how deep I need to drill, just and even insert the electrode, right? Although I do have to say that I think one of the times that I was there, yeah, I've gained appreciation and at least need someone there, right? And like the reasoning is, yeah, I think around like the 19th insert near the end, I think because of either an anatomical variation or you were too close to like a blood vessel or whatnot, but like they punctured a superficial artery, so not something that's going to kill you, but like it was bleeding quite a bit, right? And like if the robot was there and this wasn't something that was taken into account, then it would have continued to do its business, and like you don't want that, right? Because then like it could bleed into the brain, and you might get a hematoma or something, and that in itself is not a good thing to have, right? So like at least having people there, like that's not good. That's deal with that beforehand. Yeah. So, but either way, but either way, yeah. So like I mean, the end, and now you kind of have like the head full of electrodes, and the wires or like the tail ends of the electrodes are wires. And now how they determine if you're a surgical candidate or not is you pretty much are hooked up to a computer for like a day or two. And as you have seizures, the electrical activity are being recorded. And from there, they determine, is this coming from one place or from multiple places? And then, yeah, depending on where it's coming from and its pattern of expansion, then you can like plan an actual lobotomy, or you can say, sorry, but like we can't do anything, right? So, yeah.
Just based on what you said, like I'm following your train of thought. I don't see why one day like engineers just cannot completely replace the medical field. You heard it here first. That's the way
no.
no, I'm just kidding. We won't go down.
I was having this argument with a really close friend of mine, and he's very internal medicine set, and he's like, you engineers think you guys can just solve every problem? The world is much more like the human body is so complicated, and there's so much ambiguity, right? So like we don't know so much, and like, you know what, that's a fair point. We don't know so much, but like you have to put it into a perspective also. Like we were able to send people to the moon, and if you, I'm sure at least Tyler is I'm aware of this, but like the Rosetta missions, right, land a satellite onto a moving comet, right? And we don't understand everything about space and the universe, right? There's all these questions about dark matter and dark energy. We can't even reconcile like quantum mechanics with the special theory of relativity or gravity. Like these things are not problems that are solved. And furthermore, right, to do those things, we didn't even use special relativity. No, we're using Newtonian mechanics that was like generated way back when. So much uncertainty. We know it's wrong, but we can still do it, right?
Dude, let me tell you about that. Like so much uncertainty. Yes. Like I was drinking out of my Rosetta coffee mug today because it's such a cool mission. Like I have that, and then I've seen a presentation from the guy that was like one of the lead scientists on it. Heard a bunch about this mission. I still don't understand how a bunch of the stuff happened there. There's like just a ridiculous amount of technical endeavor that went into that mission. It's incredible. I think I do just want to switch gears here for one last question, because I think it's really important. Is that we obviously know that there's a lot of possibility for you now to choose exactly where you want to take your career and what you want to do. You've amassed a lot of education and a lot of knowledge, and you can go in whatever direction you want, and the possibilities are endless. But we know, and all three of us know really well, that it can hardly seem like this is the case when you're first starting university. I know when you, like me in my first year, I think I crossed biomedical off like almost immediately, because it's like you come into engineering and it's supposed to be this world of possibility. And then a lot of times I feel like we limit ourselves drastically in the first couple of years based on what we're able to do. And so I know for you, maybe there wasn't always as many possibilities as there are now. And so I would be curious as to what you would say to yourself or a student right now that might be in their initial years of university that's struggling a little bit, doesn't feel like they have a lot of options for where they want to take their career path. And maybe a good place to start is, I know you have a story about driving around Edmonton and Calgary, handing out some resumes, and maybe it didn't quite go your way. So maybe you could, if you shared that, it'd make some people feel a little better. And then what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, for sure. And it's I think about this frequently. I just turned 27 on the 6th, so a couple of days ago, and I was reflecting quite a bit. Like, we had this conversation. I'm at this point where, I've become an electrical engineer. I've done a master's in mechanical engineering. I'm in medicine now. I'm considering what surgical specialty should I go into. And even then, like you mentioned, I want to do my PhD. I'm confident that I can do that. I'm confident that that's going to be a good adventure, that the path of a clinician scientist is that for me. And like, that wasn't always the case, right? And going back to what you brought up, in first year, second year, like, you go through the emotions. First year is very difficult, very, very challenging. I recall, I think the second like calculus course that we took, the integral course, like, that was, I love math. To this day, I love math, and I talk about it every opportunity that I get. Sometimes I'm unprovoked, and even when it's unwanted, but it is what it is. But I just recall just that entire experience, like, taking that course, I felt like the midterm had gone so wrong, and I was on the verge of tears, and to think that you're going to cry over a math course, but it's just like, but it was a big deal. And I recall back in the day, like, that was a big deal, because you think to yourself, well, I'm in first year, this is what I need to do well so I can get into the programs that I want to get. And like, it does kind of influence all of your life in a way, right? And then moving on to second year and third year, and I'd say even in my master's, I switched departments, and I had to take this one optomechanical sensing course, which was pretty much a solid mechanics course combining in with electromagnetism, and I had no exposure to solid mechanics. I had to take a whole month off that course to go and teach myself solid mechanics. I think like the mechanicals take 1 or 2 courses at least before like you get competent and teach myself the core concepts alone in that month, just so I could actually tackle the graduate course that I was in. And that was ridiculously stressful, So I have to think that at those instances in time, like your world becomes very, very, very small and your thinking becomes very narrowed. And I would argue that the best thing that you can do is realize that that's not always the case, right? There's always a door that's open. There's always a possibility, and that there are many people around you that are able to provide support. Like you're never alone. And I have to say that's the one thing I really appreciate about engineering and education. For some reason in society, the picture of engineers are these lone wolves, right? And I just don't understand it, because going through, you collect your pack, whether it's 4, 5, 6, however many people, and you kind of move through the program together. You help each other out. One person is good at math, one person is good at coding, one person is good at physics, right? And you learn from each other. And I find that that's not always the case in other programs. And I can tell you personally, that's not the case, or that has not been my experience in medicine. It's more singular than with engineering. But yeah, going back to that story about expanding your horizons. So in third year, I was at a point where I was looking for a summer job, right? And I knew that I was interested in biomed, but and I was in the program, but there's a lot of uncertainty with the program, and you're told that you have to go into grad school. I didn't know if grad school was for me at that point, if I could even do it. And I was concerned that maybe I won't end up finding a job, which is a genuine concern, right? Alberta is not really the biomedical hub, although that's changing now, like with the smart network, which the Blink Lab is a part of, and other initiatives, even here in Calgary in the Schulich School of Engineering. But that wasn't the case when I was going through. Yeah, and just like all of this fear, and I thought to myself, okay, let me try and see if I can find a job to pay off start paying off my loans. Now it's just a ridiculous amount. I've given up with that question. But yeah, so there was no obvious opportunities open to me, but I sat down and I thought, what can I do, right? So, we're on the computer all of the time. And I thought to myself, I Google where like Walmart is, or where shopping centers or whatever is. Can I Google where all the engineering firms are within the city? And yeah, you can actually do that. You can type in electrical engineering firms, mechanical engineering firms, or engineering firms, and just your city will populate with these pins that indicate where all these firms are, right? And I spent, I think, this was around near the beginning of the summer. So exams had just ended. No. It was earlier. Because to find a job you have to apply early. Pro tip. So it was in between. I think exams had just ended, but it was after fall term. So we were going into winter term, and that was the time when I sat down and kind of Googled all of the firms that were in the city in Edmonton. So I did for electrical and for mechanical, because I was interested, and I was going down the controls path, and I knew that I could find some space in mechanical and automation as well as electrical. And I wrote down all the names of all the firms. I went to every single website, the ones that you could apply online. Encouraged you to apply them online. I applied them online, but there was at least 150-ish at the time in Edmonton, and around 150-ish in Calgary, which was just down the road. That didn't really suggest that they had a preference for online or in person. And I thought, you know what? Let me go and show my face, print out my resume and hand it, and maybe that'll make a difference. I did not know, right? So I sat down, made this list, made a resume and a cover letter for every single firm, right? And to make a cover letter, you can't just have a generic thing. You actually have to go to the website of these companies, see what their mission statement is, their track record, where they're going, and then from there you can kind of create something, right? So that in itself took a long time but once I had this list, then the next problem is, how can I do this in the most efficient way, right? And I actually taken Compute 274, 275, where you learned about the shortest path algorithm, right? And this was a prime application of that. I was I have all of these points. What is the shortest path? And you can't get an exact answer, but you can get a decent solution, right? I think if you do end up solving that problem, it's a problem that the math community will give you the Fields Medal for. So if you have some time in the summer, and that's something you want to tackle, it will be pretty appreciated. Even I'm not trying to, but the applications even in circuit design, how do you make a trace from one element to the other, is pretty much that problem. The traveling salesman problem thing is how it's framed in math, right? But anyway, so I got crude approximation, the fastest way to go from each of these points. And I don't think that it was probably that good, but it was good enough. But the sum total was, I got into my car when shortly after I had compiled all of that. And I think in total in my car. So this doesn't account leaving, going, talking, dropping off the resumes, but just the time that I spent in my car, not driving from Calgary to Edmonton, so not the 6 hours, whatnot, was 24 hours, right? I was in my car to go from point A to point B, dropping off resumes to like 300 companies, half in Edmonton, half in Calgary, and so on. I'm sure like the time actually going, finding places and conversing and dropping off, like might have tacked on an extra 24 hours, but I didn't know how to quantify that. But in my car, I did. So through all of that, I had applied to like 300 places and only 3 places called back, right? And one didn't really go anywhere, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we got your resume. We'll let you know if something opens up." You know, I'm like, "Hey, great," and I didn't hear back from them. Another place, asked me to come for an interview, and I went into the interview, and for some reason they said that I was not a cultural fit for the group post the interview. So I was a bit disheartening. And then finally, I had one offer that was promising, right? So this guy had called. He's like, I saw your resume. What's it called? I was quite impressed. I'd be so happy to have you come and work in the summer. And this was the power pack, right? I think I wasn't really thinking of working with the power industry at that time, but I was like, you know what, I'll take what I can get. So I was ecstatic, so happy. And he was like, yeah, like, we're really happy to have you, but you applied quite early, right? So it all depends on how the economy is by like the summer. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll fetch my so I'm essentially with the final offer. When the summer hit, the economy took a turn, and as a result, it didn't pan out. So I was quite disheartened at that I had put in so much effort and that it had resulted in nothing. Fortunately, though, one of my professors at the end of the third year, controls professors that worked in medical robotics, actually had an opening for 3 students to come and work in his lab. And I thought to myself, I had already applied to so many places. What are the chances that I'll be picked? But I was able to talk myself into not giving up, and I decided, what, let me try, and I did. The interview went really well in my opinion, and I assume it did go well because I ended up getting the position. And although it didn't pay as much as the Power Pack would have paid, it was the experience that I needed, right? So it was my first exposure to a multidisciplinary team of engineers. So I was working with mechanical engineers, and I saw that their skill sets were really complementary to my skill sets. The project was related to like building an augmented reality system for prosthetic therapy. So I'm essentially being able to guide a needle that a surgeon will insert that will find its way to the prostate, drop off some radioactive seeds. And my part was to build, to kind of put everything together. So a lot of the postdocs and graduate students had done a lot of work to model what was going on, but now they wanted a visual way, like the finishing touches. So although I say finishing touches, it was still quite involved. You had to use your rigid body modeling a good chunk of linear algebra, right? So you're doing a lot of transformations, and you realize all these things that you learned in first year, projecting from a point onto a plane and so on, are actually useful things, right? But I digress. And that experience was so foundational, so fundamental to who I am now, because it exposed me to research. It allowed me to integrate all of the skills that I had acquired, math, the engineering, electronics, programming, modeling, into doing something meaningful. And it allowed me to also stay in that space that allowed me to to operate on my why, right? So this was something that we were going to build that would improve the lives of people that were living with prostate cancer, and that really had a pull to me, and it exposed me to the medical field with the surgeon that we were working with, the other side of the biomedical field with the medical physicists that we were working with, and just showed me how interdisciplinary like this field was, and how big, how cool these projects were. And at the end, for an added bonus, I came out with a book chapter, and this was even before like my 4th year of university, and like that just really had a profound impact on me, and does to this day, right? So even though it started off with applying to 300 different firms and nothing really got back to me, there was still a door that was open. And I think the take-home message is that, you have to try and then try and then try times 300, and then try at least one more time from that, and maybe something will pan out, maybe not. But the thing is, if you stop trying, nothing will come. But as long as you're trying, there's a possibility, like there's hope, right? So yeah, I think that's what I want to share. There's a lot of uncertainty when you're going through engineering. The courses are hard. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. The economy is a factor. The opportunities might not seem as if they're there, but you just have to keep on trying, and you're going to land in something. And when you land in something, give it a chance, yes, it's good to have an idea of what you want to do, but it's also good to be able to welcome new ideas and new experiences, because you don't know how they're going to impact you down the road, right? So
Exactly. I definitely 100% agree with that. And the way I had heard you put that before is, sometimes 99 doors close, but one always opens, right? At the end of the day. So it's like, you just keep trying and you get that feedback. And if you think of your life, like almost like a control system, like even bad feedback is good because you learn something. So it's like, even like the bad feedback is telling you the direction you should be going. And it's like, okay, I didn't like that. I'm not going to keep on doing that thing. I'll go try this completely different thing over here. So I think it's really good advice is to just not sit still but just keep trying over and over and over again. Right.
That's beautiful. And a negative feedback takes us to the moon. A negative feedback, it gives us self-driving cars, even within the human body. A negative feedback is what allows us to regulate all of our hormones. Right. So it is a positive thing.
Yeah, 100%. At the end of the day, yeah, the negative feedback is positive. I love it. Well, I think that's like a really good spot for us to wrap up. So I just wanted to say thank you again so much, Inyani. That was like tons of good information that you gave us, and we're really excited to put this together into an episode. I know Dave really enjoyed it. Well, it's too bad he had to drop off a little bit early for work, but I know that this was exactly what we wanted to make sure that we got out of you. So we were really happy with it. So thanks, man.
For sure, and I appreciate the opportunity. It was really nice to talk to the both of you.
Yeah, so really hope you guys enjoyed Inyani's feedback in the episode. As always, we on TrailBlazers here are like really happy to always share like these amazing stories of really great people. So if you're liking the content, please give it a thumbs up because that helps us on YouTube, and as well subscribe because we're always sharing new content, always highlighting new stories. And if you are somebody that has like one of these different backgrounds and you're trailblazing in one way or another, we're super happy to talk with you too. So feel free to reach out to either Tyler and I. But on Inyani's kind of episode, like, I took down quite a bit of notes just after the fact and was thinking about things. Some of the things that I really kind of was interested in was like Inyani's like why. He always had kind of like a why to thinking where he was going next with something. Like I liked that even when he said after he did his bachelor's in electrical with like the biomed option, then he was wanting to do his master's project. And then when he was doing his master's project, he also went and applied in like many different fields, not just within say electrical engineering or mechanical engineering. He had like many different things that he was trying to like work through and think through. And I think, Inyani's case of just like he takes the time to kind of think through each of these options, which gives him a better idea for like his choice down the line of getting a better focus on like what's the why and like what am I going to get out of this. Tyler, what do you think?
100%. He's got a really strong why driving him. And I think it's interesting that he didn't come into school immediately having that. It seemed like he developed that over time. He was saying that, he was always interested in physics, but also biology. And so you can see that's where the biomed option came in. And then, his work with prosthetic limbs, and then now the medical field. And yeah, he's kind of developed that over time. And I really like the part that he talked about, about how his work with the actual patients that benefit from the prosthetic limbs that he designs and he helps build, how they prevent. He told a really touching story about, the father that got to walk his daughter down the aisle. And I think that, when he can really see the end result of exactly what his work is doing, it builds and amplifies his why and makes him want to do more. You can see him getting more and more driven as kind of the years go on, which I think is awesome. And so, yeah, I definitely learned a lot from him. He has a very strong why. He's thought about it a lot. And I think, I always benefit from hearing, how he's developed that and kind of how you can develop it a little bit more in your own life. Cause it's a very strong compass for him, it seems like.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the notes that I had wrote down to Tyler was that story about basically him seeing that father, that dad who was able to walk his daughter down the aisle, and how much like that mean to him, right? And it kind of does make us think to some extent too, like depending on our personalities and the work that we're doing at that particular point in time, actually having like a tangible outcome or some type of like tangible material benefit, you can see like what you're doing. It can be kind of like a motivator, but I guess even at the same point too is say like in careers or jobs where we might not have that, or we might not see that on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month basis. It's like, if you find some like other portions of that journey that you find interesting or enjoyable, that's enough, right? Like for me, for example, a good example is like I work in the cybersecurity domain and also like cloud. Whereas like, sometimes we might not actually be able to see like the tangible outcome on a day-to-day basis. But then, like something I can see as a process that I enjoy about this journey is that like I'm always learning about a new domain, or I'm learning about a new field. I might not be able to see like the tangible outcome of my work on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, but like I like the process of the learning. And I think it's like if we as professionals, as young professionals, can think about maybe some other way that like it satisfies us or it makes us like happy, it's a beautiful thing, because we it helps us make like emphasis about like the work that we're putting in every day. Like what is your authentic voice saying, and like are you feeding yourself like what you want to get out of life?
Right on. Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Dave. And then it's interesting. I like that point too, because when you're working, there's always going to be your good days and bad days, and projects are going to go bad, and sometimes it's not like you're going to have one bad day, you're going to have bad months in a row and stuff like that. So if you don't have a strong reason for why you're working at that place or doing what you're doing, then it's going to make it difficult to keep showing up every single day and giving 100% and having that life satisfaction. So knowing why you're doing something is incredibly important. You can see with Inyani, he's doing incredibly challenging things. And so, but he's got a why driving him. So it looks like he's having fun the entire time. And he does all this stuff in his spare time too. If any of you go check out his LinkedIn, it's just him like playing with robots that he's built and stuff like that. So he's just naturally curious and, very focused in that engineering mindset and wants to build things and stuff like that. So you can tell this is the right path for him to be going down for sure. I also really liked the story he told at the end about driving around for 24 hours straight and handing out a bunch of resumes to different places to try to get the, to try to get that job. And so I was just like, wow, that's a lot of drive. That takes a lot, despite the fact that he's, extremely qualified and everything like that. That was a little bit earlier, but it just kind of shows the type of motivation. If you want something, you kind of, push yourself to make it happen. I thought it was a really good example of that. And we've heard that a few times, from other people that, have gotten jobs or gotten applications accepted someplace like that, is that, they do something extra kind of stand out a little bit. And I feel like this was kind of Inyani's thing, where you don't hear that often, that you'll drive around for 24 hours in a car to do that. So I thought that was a great story.
Yeah, for sure, Tyler. And the kind of the takeaway that I took from that was basically this is, I think he said he tried 300 times with handing out the resumes. And then one person gave him a call back and basically said, like, depending on the economy, then we can give you a job. And then I think I remember him mentioning that opportunity actually also didn't pan out. So then basically, but he eventually got something after. So he's like, even if you try 300 times and the 300 times don't pan out, it's like, you need to keep going. I think basically one takeaway he had from that was like, if you don't try, you definitely won't have any opportunities, right? And I mean, like, this is kind of just like the point with like life too, is that if we basically think that, you know, something's going to come to us if we don't basically take the initiative to begin with, it rarely actually happens unless, you know, we have great connections that go out of their way to like help us out, or if, you know, a significant other or a parent or something like that has like a great relationship in a company, it can, you know, lift us up. So like, I really liked Inyani's like humbleness and just like his drive to kind of like push the status quo, and even say like when he had been knocked down like so many times already, even just during this case of him trying to hand out the resumes, he still had the initiative to like get back up, get on his feet, and go do it one more time, which I loved. And like, I think it's such like a great story to tell young people too, just because so many times we kind of expect that things are going to work like fairly solidly. But even somebody like Inyani, who's now planning to basically be like a surgeon, which is very competitive and very difficult. Like, he had a case where he had to hand out 300 individual resumes, and basically out of the 300 times, like nobody even got him back once, right? So it's like, even something like that, it's just like, get back up and like keep going, and like we'll get it.
Yeah, 100% agree. No, it's you know, it's just that resilience, right? You know, it doesn't work on time 299, then you're going to go to 300, then you're going to go to 301 and stuff like that. You know, you kind of always get back up and try again. I love that mindset that he has. He's just going to keep on going. So it was really great to see. And, you know, on top of that, you can tell he's really into trying new things and experimenting and getting out of his comfort zone and stuff like that, with all the little projects that he tries on the side and everything. And huge shout out to him, because, you know, we have a couple of episodes out now, but Inyani was one of the very first people that we had interviewed. And so, you know, we didn't have anything out to show at that point. We just kind of told him the idea, and he was in right away. So huge thank you to Inyani for taking the chance on us when me and Dave were just starting. You can tell because it's on Zoom compared to the other ones where it's on a different platform. So it's from early on. But, you know, he didn't even bat an eye. He came right on and talked to us. And so huge thanks to Inyani. He dropped a lot of wisdom, and we hope you guys enjoyed it. Anything else, Dave?
Pretty much good with me. I'll leave us with two more quotes, and then after these two quotes, I think we can wrap it up. Okay, quote number one: it's not what you do, but who you do it with. Like, if you have great coworkers or, you know, great friends, it's going to make your life that much easier. Okay, quote number two: what would you say to your younger self? You know, if you were going back 5 years, a couple of years, something like that. I thought both of those were interesting. So these are the quotes I will leave you guys with today. If you're still listening at this point, like and subscribe, give it the big thumbs up. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys next time. Thank you.
See you guys next time.